And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
All right, attention and roll call.
That's right, everybody. Good morning. 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course 5:05 on the Pacific Coast. It's bright and early. Good morning. Got a great show for you. Retired NYPD Sergeant Christopher Strom, outstanding person, outstanding individual, fellow Marine, Semper. I think this is going to be an awesome show. Christopher Strom has a great book. I don't want to give all the details. I want him to give an opportunity to plug that. But before we get into it, let's just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, how you became a Marine, and of course, why you became a cop.
Well, first and foremost, thanks guys for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. I grew up on Long Island, came from kind of a broken home, not saying that to, can't garner any sympathy from people, but that's really what it was. Joined the Marine Corps 5 days after I turned 17, got my parents' permission, and got to tell you, it was a horrifying experience the first couple of days there. I mean, my whole world was pretty much Long Island. I was very sheltered. I lived with my grandparents for the majority of my younger years and upbringing and things. And it was a culture shock. And so anyway, 4 years in the Marine Corps, loved it, got out. What am I going to do? I said, I always wanted to be a cop. I always watched all the cop shows. I always watched these investigative programs. And I said, that's something I really want to do. It looks exciting. So I took the test like most people, and I got hired in January of 1987. So the academy was, the daily grind, the commute. This is when you actually had to throw quarters in the toll booth to get into the Midtown Tunnel. And people would be like, what do you mean quarters? I'm like, yeah. And sometimes if it bounced out, the gate came back down, and you're like, hey, you owe more money or whatever it was, that kind of a thing. Like, oh, no, we're short 1 quarter. But anyway,
So you used to see people pull up with their car doors open, like bending out, trying to get those quarters.
It was because if they would fall or it'd fall on the ground exactly, and you're like crap, And then I went from there. I went to my NSU. I'm trying to remember. I think it was NSU 18 because I was in Coney Island in the 6-1, and I loved it. I thought it was great. Had a really seasoned sergeant that was my field training officer. This guy Billy Smith, and back in the days there, you walk probably out of the 20 tours you did a month, you got maybe 1 or 2 car tours. That was it, and usually it was with at least one other person, sometimes 2. So you weren't even driving. You were just in the car pretty much with the sergeant. So, and then from there, I went to the 101 precinct in Queens, and I was there for, I guess, 8 years. And I got involved in a shooting. And of course, they made it they attached a racial component to it, which had nothing to do with it. And from there, I got laterally promoted to the robbery task force, which was headquartered over in the 107 precinct. And I had a great time. I mean, I got to live out. It was like anti-crime on steroids. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it, but it was like a street crime unit, but it was just basically based in Queens. And we had everything south of the Grand Central Parkway. So I did that for 4 years. And I mean, you talk about excitement and rolling and where are we going to go tonight and having your whole pick of the whole borough pretty much. And loved it. And then I took the sergeant's test. I got promoted and they transferred me to the 7-6 precinct in Brooklyn, which I didn't even know where it was, to be quite honest with you. I was like, I was a Queens guy for, 12, 13 years. I was like, Brooklyn was a place that we passed through on Atlantic Avenue, and we kind of didn't stop for the red lights if we didn't have to. And but it turned out to be one of the best places to ever work, and it was a very close-knit precinct. It's in the Red Hook section. It's the border is Atlantic Avenue, and then all the way west is the East River, and then the southern part would be down toward the where the Battery Tunnel and the Gowanus is. So it wasn't a very big precinct, but it had the Red Oak houses in it, had the Gowanus houses. And I was there for about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months. And the captain approached me and said, hey, would you like to do the street narcotics enforcement? And I said, well, don't you already have a guy that's doing that? And he goes, well, and there was a guy there and he was having some marital issues. And I guess they thought it would be a good idea idea to pull him. But you know what it's like when you're the new guy, you don't want to make waves, and especially as a new sergeant. There's people there that have been sergeants 5, 6, 7, 10 years. Who knows? So I approached him and I said, I'll just say John. I don't want to say what his name is, but I said, hey, John, the captain's asking me. I don't want the position. I'm not stepping on your neck to get ahead. And he said, no, dude. He goes, I've got problems at home. He goes, I don't feel slighted. And he appreciated the fact that I came and spoke to him about it. And I said, okay. So, but I put it off to the captain and said, well, I got to check with my wife. I don't know. I didn't want to give him an answer. I needed an out at the same time. So I took the position. And I ended up working with his team. And of course, it's a mixed bag of people, guys and girls, and they were kind of like sizing me up. They're like, who is this guy? And, it's a whole trust issue. You have to kind of like relearn everything. And it turned out to be one of the best teams I ever worked with. We had more laughs every day and made more arrests and just had a great time. And it was one of those things where you wanted to go to work. I made my own tours. The captain just said, I don't care, just go out and get them. And they went from doing like 1 or 2 search warrants a year to we were doing like 1 search warrant, sometimes 2 a month. That's just how busy we were and how cohesive the team was. And of course, 9/11 happened. And now they're looking for sergeants to go into the intelligence division. And again, I'm very happy where I am. I would have, in fact, had 9/11 not happened, I wouldn't have gone to the intelligence division. It wouldn't be something on my list of things that I would even apply myself for. And a new captain had come in, and they were looking for like field intelligence officers. And they said, "Hey, Chris, would you be interested in this?" And I'm like, I said, I don't know, boss. I said, I'm pretty happy where I am. But the backstory to it was my son had gotten very, very sick with RSV. And this same captain got me assigned to employee relations for 8 weeks. So the reality was I didn't want to go, but I couldn't say no, because how are you going to say no to somebody who did something like that for me, for my son? So I end up taking the position. I get into the field intelligence unit, and I'm turning out of the Brooklyn Army Terminal down the road from the 7-6, and my commute is horrendous. The 7-6 was bad. This was even worse. I think every day going to work. But again, now I'm surrounded by amazing people, people that made me look like a superstar. I mean, quite honestly, like I was a street guy. I wasn't an inside guy. I wasn't that I couldn't do paperwork and do police reports and arrest reports. But this was a whole different, more like formal, so to speak, avenue of that I was going into. And I wasn't, like anything else, it was changed, and I didn't like the change. But again, as they say, surrounded by amazing, gifted people again that made me look like a superstar and welcomed me wholeheartedly.
No, that's so you kind of went through your whole career there, and you had a wide array of experience. You went through patrol, you went through anti-crime, you go to street narcotics, then you go over the intelligence section. What makes you hang it up at that point? Like, when do you realize, like, all right, I've had a pretty good career, I could go further, I should leave? Like, what makes you hang it up, and then like what happens from there?
Well, to be honest with you, it's emotional when you leave. I didn't want to leave, but one of the things that was happening is because I would have daily interactions with the JTTF. So that would include the FBI, who I'm just going to say, honestly, I couldn't stand them. They were really abrasive people to work with. I'm sure not much has changed. I'm sure some has changed, but not much has changed. And the other reality too was you had people there that were assigned to the JTTF that were our guys and girls, and their whole attitude was pretty obnoxious and offensive. So I had I worked at what they call the Counterterrorism leads desk. So we would get a lead. It would come in either through an email or it would come through mail, any number of ways. It could be a phone call. It could be a live response. And we would take these jobs and we would go investigate them. So one of the things that was happening quite frequently was that we would get it, and 90% of the time it was just people's paranoia, but that was fine. You know what I mean? Like we understood that, and we accepted that. So we would go out and do these investigations, and every once in a while, lo and behold, the crazy lady in Brooklyn that's got 5 cats and sits on her front stoop every day, she actually saw something that has a nexus to terrorism. So we would run these cases, we would do surveillance, and you'd be like a couple months into it, and the next thing you know, you get a phone call from the JTTF. So like, oh, we have a parallel investigation with one of the same subjects that's part of your investigation. So we're taking primacy, and we're taking over this case. And so, of course, there's not much you can do. And again, from a supervisory standpoint, I kind of expected that. I didn't like it. I'm not going to pretend, to you guys that, that I was fine with that. I was furious most of the time. But from a supervisor's position, when you have a detective that's really worked this case hard, and now they take the case down, and this jackass is sitting over here pretending like he ran this whole case for 6 months, meaning the FBI or one of his, lackeys that are working for him. Meanwhile, the real detective that had the case is nowhere even on the stage, much less near the podium when this is being said. So I made that a long story, but I want people to understand that was my frustration. They paid me handsomely. I had over 1,500 hours of comp time before I left. In fact, the guy that was my deputy inspector that ran this particular unit, Vinny Mara, I bumped into him in the hallway, and he said, we were going to put you in for SDS. So, but I had already put my papers in, and I was like, but everything works out. It's part of God's plan. You don't think it is, but it is. And it just worked out. But that is the reason why I was leaving. I was like, I'm leaving on a high note. People, respected me. I was well-liked, loved. I got the gold ring. I got the plaque. I got the big party at an Italian restaurant in Lower Manhattan. So everything was good. So I wasn't disgruntled. I wasn't unhappy, and people weren't unhappy with me. They knew I was a worker bee. They knew that if they gave me something, I was going to take care of it. It wasn't going to be like a half, baked type of investigation. It would be fully investigated.
Chris, before we go further to some questions, what year did you actually leave? What year did you retire?
My official retirement date was February of 2007.
2007. Okay. So I did hear you say not much has changed, but the overwhelming majority of the police department has changed vastly, especially in comparison to 2007.
Right.
Now, 2025. What you're seeing, it must be, astronomical, especially that you were working intel. So speaking about intel, we're talking about terrorism. What did you see as far as the approach to terrorism that's far different to what we see to domestic terrorism that's going on in LA and now moving into New York? What do you see as far as how the police operated in comparison to now?
Well, when I was in Intel, we had this guy named Dave Cohen. So he was a 36-year CIA guy. So he asked a lot of questions. He asked a lot of really smart questions. And I can tell you, we had a lawyer on standby just so that we could operate. Like, what was our left and right boundaries on a lot of things. So, I became very well versed in the Patriot Act, and that, of course, has changed and evolved over time. So I depended upon a lot of that. So as an example, just one case that's sticking out of my mind. A guy had an apartment. He wasn't paying his rent. The super goes into the apartment and sees like an array of passport photos on this desk, and they're all of Middle Eastern descent, these people. So he closes the door, he calls us, and the next thing you know, we're freezing the location because we don't know what's going on here. But clearly there's something more. Now, prior to 9/11, people would be like, well, you see photos. How can you create a nexus to a criminal element, much less a potential terrorist event? So some of those things were very innocuous. Some of those things were, we had all the people in place to do seizures, and we had a team, and I had the availability of basically calling the district attorney and saying, this is what I got. And the warrant would be ready before I even got downtown to get it. So that would just be like one of the investigations. Then there's the other ones where there's an actual explosion. Now, is it an explosion in the subway? Is it an explosion in a garage somewhere? Is it a battery that exploded? Is it a real explosion? Like, there'd be no stone left unturned. And then, of course, you had people that were on watch lists. So, you had to do some, big time surveillance, big time investigations, and many hours. And then, of course, we had the FBI and the JTTF come along and say, okay, now we're going to take the case back. But thank you for the, little pat on your head. Thanks for all the hard work you did, that kind of a thing. So,
yeah, I mean, One question for you before we move on and stay with you. Like when you were in there, did you? I don't think you were directly handling them, but were we still utilizing undercovers in terrorist operations, like where we sent undercovers inside of mosques? And I know that later became a big issue. It later became a big issue for Bill de Blasio. I believe it started under like when you right after 9/11 and through, and I believe we thwarted numerous terrorist attacks, as there was a lot of hate in certain mosques in Brooklyn, particularly in Brooklyn. Did you have any interaction with that? And like, what's your thoughts on us like getting rid of our undercovers inside of certain communities that we believe, or any community for that matter?
Well, I could tell you quite honestly, I got $50,000 a quarter for buy money. So that would include confidential informants and sources. So we used that money. I mean, we would go through it. Again, I had 8 detectives working for me, $50,000. And again, I know you know this, and Eric, of course, knows this, John. In the NYPD, you're not getting paid unless I'm getting something. It's got to be either actionable intelligence. It's got to be something that's physical, a photograph, something. You know, the FBI continues to this day, and correct me if I'm wrong, to pay money just for being there. Like, there's no actionable intelligence, and they've created an environment where it's self-serving for the confidential informant, and the investigation never really moves forward. Or consequently, they have an investigation, and they're getting ready to retire, and they're like, well, I don't want to start a new investigation, so they'll run this thing to ground for like 2 years. And every month they'll have a meeting to schedule the meeting for the following month. So it's like, it's one of these things. But we had a terrorist interdiction unit, which of course was dismantled. And a friend of mine that actually just retired, Jack Cucci, who I know you're familiar with, John. I don't know if Eric is or not. He ran that unit. And that unit was deep into the mosques and deep into, they called them cafe cruisers. So they would be in the places where they had coffee and primarily on Atlantic Avenue, primarily in Brooklyn. That's where their focus point were. But they had also, as you say, deep undercovers, which again, I'm not going to get too far in the weeds, but nobody knew who these people were except their handler and maybe the lieutenant. That's it. Nobody knew who they were. They never came to a police facility. A lot of times they didn't even live in New York City. So I mean, it was a very sophisticated form of intelligence gathering that was highly effective. Very effective.
Yeah, it's important to know the vast amount of experience that you have, and especially intel, with your background, and then really taking a deep dive into terrorism. And I'm glad that you mentioned the Patriot Act, right? Because I have to admit, and John and I talk about this, right? We all were for the Patriot Act. We were excited by it when when it started, especially at the height of terrorism, especially during 9/11, right? Expanding wiretap surveillance, expanding phone surveillance. But I think the way that it's expanded till now, how we move forward, starts to cross over into civil liberties. So what are your thoughts on the Patriot Act as far as the utilization of it then? What were your thoughts on it? And what are your thoughts of it now?
Well, I was all for it. I felt that it was a very necessary tool. Again, if you have a clear conscience, you're still going within the guidelines. I'd like to think that I did that. And I did, it was gray in some areas. It was gray, and it could have been, somebody could have looked at it and said, "I'm for it. I'm not for it," or "I'm for it." But that's why we had an attorney that was on a call for us 24/7. So if I had something that was not enough, so to speak, just like it would be like when you call the district attorney, "Can I get a warrant?" and they'd be like, "You need more." You know what I mean? Same thing that we had, except that we were bypassing the district attorney. We had the use of our own. Looking at it now, looking at what was done to the Trump administration and looking at these FBI people that totally abused it and really ruined it for people that wanted to use it for legitimate investigative purposes. I don't know, I don't know how they get up in the morning and shave and look at themselves and say, I didn't, try and take down a president. I stood before a judge at the FISA court with a blurb from a Yahoo email that was some BS story and swear out a warrant and then act upon that warrant to do surveillance on people in the Trump administration. I mean, it's outrageous, really, when you think about it. So, so now, having said that, Yeah, I think they have to pull it back, and that's why I think every 2 or 3 years, I can't remember what the time frame is, they'll sunset certain aspects of it, and it comes up for review. So there might be 4 different points of the Patriot Act that are obviously still utilized, but then others where they're like, yeah, we want to look at this again. I don't know that we want to be doing this anymore in terms of the ease of getting a warrant versus what it was back in 2001, 2002.
Yeah, no, it definitely got abused at a certain point, right? Same thing with stop, question, and frisk, right? Great tool. We abused it, and then we gave a bad stain on something that's actually effective and something that's, but could potentially go again, violate Americans' constitutional rights if not used properly. So now you retire, right? And I read your book. I read Brooklyn and Baghdad. Great book. So could you just tell everybody, like, where was your mind at that time, like, and what'd you wind up doing?
Well, it was one of these things where I had moved down to Virginia, and my plan was to do construction. I like construction. I still do things. Went and got out and got my A license to build homes and things like that. And I was involved in a partnership with some guy, and it didn't work out. It was one of these things where his work ethic and my work ethic were miles apart. And I thought I knew what he was like, but I was mistaken. So anyway, I had been applying for different jobs. I'm watching what's going on during the Iraq War. I'm watching these young soldiers being, blown up and incinerated, and then follow-on attacks and being shot. And I'm like, I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting angry. So I ended up applying for a couple of different jobs, and I get a call, and I'm literally in my basement painting on a ladder. And, if anyone's painted before and you're doing the cuts, you're like, do I really want to, I got paint on my hands. So I want to stop and take this phone call. Is it spam or whatever? Like, I've got some momentum. The paper's down, the tarps are down. I'm like, I just want to roll with this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I answer the phone, and it turns out it's this guy who's the program manager for MPRI L3 Communications. And he says, hey, I'm reading your resume. I'd like to talk to you for a minute. Do you have time? And I go, well, I said, yeah. I said, I sent out quite a few resumes, sir, so I'm not really familiar with your company. So he gave me the bare bones of what the job would entail. And he basically said, you'd be an advisor to a battalion commander. And in Iraq, is that something you'd be interested in? And I said, I'd like to discuss it with my wife, but it's something I'm definitely interested in. Of course, I knew my wife would say yes, because she knew this is the kind of stuff I like to do. And so I called him back, and from there, there's like, you're filling out paperwork, you're doing the SF-96 online. They want to know, everything about you and to get your security clearance approved. And then I end up going for a meeting in, it wasn't in Reston, it was Lansdowne, Virginia. And I'm there for like 2 weeks of orientation. And they're talking about Iraq, a lot of PowerPoints. We're actually working out and seeing people that have already been in theater and coming back and sharing their experiences. So they grabbed me and one other guy during the class, and they go, hey, the program manager wants to see you. So, my mind immediately goes to, I don't think this is going to be good. I think this could be like they found something in my background that they're not happy with, or whatever it is. I don't know. And the guy goes, relax. He goes, you're not in trouble. The program manager wants to talk to you, and he just wants to discuss something with you. So we go in there. They closed the door, and they basically described the job that what I was previously going to be doing was as an advisor. They basically said you'll be part of a very small team that will go out and do captures, and your job will be to do interrogations at the point of capture. Is that something you'd be interested in? And I'm like, yeah, 100%. Sign me up for that. Sign me up for that. Because now, instead of, it's almost like being at one police plaza. Yeah, you're an advisor, but you're not with the guys. You're not in the field. You're not seeing these people, and you have to understand, these are people that are killing soldiers. These are bomb makers. These are serious bad people. And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to do this. I want to do this. I want to see if I can, make a difference, as opposed to just kind of being a behind the scenes person in Iraq, doing the job that they described. So that's kind of like how that all evolved. And then from there, I went to months of training. I went to explosive school. I went to Aberdeen, Maryland, where we blew things up and did what they call post-blast assessment, learned how to reconstruct things, chemical testing, you name it. And then we're out in the field, and now I'm working with another group of people in Roswell, New Mexico, and they're all special forces guys. And of course, I'm just a lowly Marine and a cop from New York. I mean, what do you bring to the table? I'm a door kicker. I'm a pipe hitter. You know what I mean? That kind of an attitude. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, have you ever conducted an interview? Have you ever written an interrogation report? And they're like, no. I go, oh, okay. Well, that's kind of like what I do. I don't know, So, so the initial, we eventually get done with all of this training, and we finally get in country. And the leadership initially, and John, from reading the book, was horrible. We had a tough time ingratiating ourselves with Big Army, and nobody really wanted to work with us. And I'm after like 6 months, I'm just saying to myself, I don't know if I could do this for another 6 months, because it wasn't about money anymore. It was just feeling like this is stupid. Like I'm not doing anything here, anything productive, And the guy, like I said, that was originally managing the team, he was horrible. He had no communication skills, and he was saying things that when he would have a meeting in front of the JAG and make a proposal about how we want to do a targeting, he was making him feel uneasy. Where they looked at us like cowboys, like we're just going to go out there and cause more problems for the brigade commander, which was nothing could be further from the truth. But that was his opinion of him based upon the salesmanship of the guy that was running the team initially.
It's interesting to me because I deployed to Iraq in January 2003, and it was so primitive at the time. All we had was tents. We were in the middle of nowhere setting up. I spent most of my time in Basra, and I know you made it to Baghdad. It's a great story. There was a contract. I want to thank you also for being there. A lot had changed from 2003 so you went about 2008, am I correct?
2008 to 2009.
Yeah.
So I had 15 months in theater.
Yeah, a lot changed from 2003 to 2008 as things started to develop. That's great. So what types of, and I it's interesting because I was talking about this with John, right? It felt like, even though, when I was in Iraq, at times it was kind of like, this is war, but it also felt like a police action, right? We didn't know who was who. There were certain checkpoints, and try to determine why you're there and who to talk to and who to trust. So what types of things did you see on the ground that were kind of relative to policing? Because, I always talk about this, how serving Iraq was in some ways almost like being a cop overseas. So what type of things did you see on the ground? What were your experiences?
Well, our focus was Counter-IED. So we counter improvised explosive device. And the unit that was our overwatch was JIADO, which was the Joint Improvised Explosive Defeat Device Organization. I may have misspoke. It's a jumble, but basically they looked at it like, hey, we need to stay left of boom. We're not left of boom anymore. We're right of boom. And they had approached the problem that way for many years. So it's true what you're saying, Eric. They looked at it like it should be a police matter. We need to get the drugs before they sell the drugs. Here we need to get the bomb makers, the facilitators, the emplacers before it actually happens. So we went from having an IED event in our theater of operation, in our AO, at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. I mean, the reality too was the small arms fire and the death by some sniper round, that was going away. That really wasn't happening anymore. The majority of the people being killed, as you say, when I got there, John, in 2008, was by IEDs and car bombs and VBIDs and all these other things. So how do you fix this problem? Well, we had a guy named Matt Bacino, who my book is in memory of, and he was in what they call an 18 Fox from the Special Forces community. He was a Green Beret, and he was on loan to us, and he did the targeting. So we went from doing one mission a month to just sitting around on our hands to we were doing a mission every day. It was mentally and physically exhausting, the op tempo. And we would find these people. And then what happens is, and I'll just give a broad brush example. We'd find somebody, the guy would go active. He'd be on his cell phone. We'd be tracking him. I'm not going to get involved in the sophistication, but we had national assets. We had local assets in terms of ISR and electronic communications and things like that. And we would fix the location, find it, and then the team that I was with, this 122 TST, which was run by Sergeant Dave Peluso, they would action it, they would breach, and then I go in there, and now there's 6 people in the house, 3 or 4 females, 2 or 3 guys, and the guy that I'm looking at from the targeting package is a silhouette, is a nickname. It's not like these people are completely unsophisticated. They don't use their real name. So now how do I figure out who is the bad guy and who is not the bad guy? Or are they all bad guys? I don't really know until you start, talking to these people. And so that's where the rubber met the road. So I would, generally speaking, probably 95% of the time, my interviews and interrogations took place in a bathroom with this person. And based upon what this person would tell me, you would look at certain verbal cues, you would look at certain behavioral aspects of this person, and like if this person sometimes would have formal resistance training, so you were aware of that. So it was one of these things where I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'm smart enough to know that, and I don't know what this person knows, but I need to find out. So while this is going on contemporaneously, I would get a knock on the door, and they knew if I was doing an interrogation, don't bother me because it'll break the whole chain and momentum. And they'd go, Chris, and they would bring me in something, and it would be bomb material related. So it might be a ledger that shows accounting for materials. It might show some pieces of equipment like what you see right there that are definitely used in bomb making. And so it would just be like a psychological collapse of this person. Yeah, you lie. And I'm like, just like it was in the NYPD. I'm like, I don't know. How did this get in your house? You know what I mean? Like logic traps and things like that. And then, eventually you'd wear this person out. And the person would say, okay. And you'd say, I know you're not really a bad guy. Tell me who the real bad guy is. And now, did that work all the time? No, it didn't work all the time. But I've gone to as many as 4 different targets in one operation, based upon what people told me at the first operation. So before that, if you went out with the Army, you had a 21-year-old lieutenant, and this is his first rodeo in country. You have a guy that went to Fort Huachuca who learned how to be an interrogator. He's 21 years old too, okay? And he's going in here like he's going to save the day, and he's going to crack this guy open. Well, culturally, if this guy is like in his 40s and you're 21, that's a no-go right from the start. That's not going to help you, number one. So, and number two, you can't expect somebody that's 21 years old to have the experience that you and I, John and yourself, Eric, have after 20 some odd years in the NYPD. It's just not possible. It's not possible, and it's unrealistic. So using that example, they would go out, and if they thought the guy was a bad guy, but the lieutenant who is the ground assault commander wasn't satisfied, they would walk away with their tail behind their legs. They were like, I'm not taking this guy because I'm not convinced, meaning the lieutenant, that this guy is who it is. That changed with our unit, with the Phoenix team, because now it's like we built this relationship of trust, and the hit potential was so great that if I said to Dave, who was running the team, the actual green suiters, I said, this guy says he can take me to the actual bomb maker. He's just a financier guy. He's low hanging fruit. He goes, let's go. And we would fix the location. We'd go there and hit pay dirt each time. So like we've all experienced doing a search warrant where you get a dry hole. Like that happens. Even in Iraq, that happened. I'm not going to sit here and say everything was fairy dust and we got pay dirt every time. No, but I would say 80% of the time we got the bad guy, and we got something material to tie it to this bad guy. And it was incredible. The adrenaline rush is so, and then the dump, of course, is so incredible that, you'd be on a 24-hour, 32-hour burn, just trying to get all the process. I did all the evidence processing. I did all the interrogation reports, and I'm 48 years of age when this is all going on. So it's like, but like I said, getting back to the adrenaline, it made it easy because you felt like you were doing something. You felt like, okay, I'm not solving the world problems, but I'm solving this retard is not going to kill another soldier with a bomb. He is not, because he's going away now. Okay. So he's out of play.
Wow. So how many of these raids would you say, or like warrants, I guess we could call them, raids? How many of them did you go on in your, I think you said 15 months? Like how many were like, what was a frequent week for you guys?
Well, I did 110 combat missions.
Wow.
So that give you an idea. the team collectively rounded up 91 high-value targets, tier 1 and tier 2. So for your audience's benefit, I know Eric knows this, maybe you do as well, John. A tier 1 is like a special forces operation. So you're talking about a SEAL team, you're talking about a Green Beret or a composite of the two going out to get these people. So, and here's the crazy thing. You go out there and you grab this guy, right? Serious bad guy, bomb maker, explosives, no question about it. Creating all kinds of mayhem. All of a sudden, I'd be dropping him off at the detention facility. I worked out of Fob Falcon. So we were about like 12 miles south of Victory Base in Baghdad proper and Baghdad International Airport. And all of a sudden, I'd hear the Black Hawk coming in. And then you see the guys all Gucci'd out, like, hey, can you tell me where the detention facility is? I'm like, oh, yeah, it's right down there. Who are they coming? The guy that you just rolled up for them. So not only was that happening with a great degree of frequency, but it was creating problems, unintended consequences and problems, because the colonel that's running the special forces team is saying, I don't understand. If this guy was on the plate and on deck and for actioning, why is it that these group of old men and some guy from New York is going out and grabbing our targets? Like, why is this happening? And again, it wasn't by design. There also is obviously deconfliction in the talk about the Tactical Operations Center about what targets we're going to put. And then, it's almost like when you had to do the decks, you had to put out the location of where you're going to do and who you're going to action and things like that. So they were aware of it. And then it got to the point, this is like something out of a movie. We would grab the guy. They were aware that we were going to grab the guy, and we would meet them. So at another location, and we would get the grid cords. And now we're doing an actual handoff, almost like a warrant squad. Like, hey, thanks. We appreciate what you guys did. You know what I mean? So that became a very frequent occurrence. And again, I'm just a guy from New York doing my part. All that other static has nothing to do with me. Has really, really nothing to do with me. But I can tell you, if you're a colonel in that unit, it's very unnerving that that's happening at a brigade level. Actually, at a battalion level, that this is happening. And but of course, the colonel that we're serving at the brigade level, he's loving it because he's looking like a superstar. So his focus is elimination of IEDs and getting his Silver Eagle turned into a Silver Star for promotion to general. That's what his focus is.
100%. You're absolutely right about that. They want to get that star on their shoulder. It's interesting what you talk about. I love it. We talked about utilizing undercovers when you're working with intel within the NYPD. Now, at this bracket and this function, you're interviewing detainees. Now, did you also utilize informants in this unit as well? I assume you did. If you did, what type of amenities were promised these informants, if any? Did you ever offer any? Were passports offered, or what was it? Just funding, and were any informants also compromised, if any?
Well, what we did was we knew there was going to be a secondary. So in other words, I did my interrogation report. I said the guy's cooperative, not cooperative, gave valuable information, whatever it was, and they were going to get passed off, and then there would be a secondary debrief. What I was finding also out on the battlefield was I would grab this guy, and then he would whisper to me, hey, I'm working for the CIA. Now, that's a real problem, because is he really working for the CIA, or is he just pulling my chain? I don't know. But it's concerning enough that if he really is, again, I'm a team player. I'm not like a me player. So I want what's good for everybody to the outcome, as I said before, is to eliminate the IEDs as much as you can so that soldiers don't get killed anymore. If this guy is working for the CIA and he's a source op, then I don't want to thwart that. So I had that happen several times, and people used to laugh at me, and they're like, Chris, this guy he's wasting your time. He's not. I'm like, but what if he's not wasting my time? How do we actually vet this guy? How do you know? How do you know even more than me? And I don't know. Like, what does your spidey senses tell you that he's not? So a lot of times they were BSing, but a lot of times they weren't. So to that point, we would do these raids, and inside the house, I taught what they call tactical site exploitation. So it's basically how to do a search warrant. But now, when I did the training, I'd be like, you're looking for a SIM card that's this big. That is your focus. So if you got to go through dirty laundry and every pocket of every piece of clothes that's in their closet. That's what I want you to do. So, of course, when you engage regular Army in that, they feel like they're part of the team too. And you'd be amazed as a force multiplier how great this was and how excited these, I call them kids, but they're not kids. They were young. I'm 48. These are 21-year-old soldiers and beautiful people, obviously. As a course of doing the search, what are they finding? Tens of thousands of dollars in $100 bills, brand new, uncirculated, in serial number order. Now, you don't have to be a detective from New York to realize they didn't steal that money. Somebody gave them that money. But the question is, who gave them that money? And this guy, by the way, is a bomb maker. Not like a maybe bomb maker, but it is a bomb maker. So I'm come full circle about how in the NYPD, we're not giving you money unless we're getting something. And it's got to be tangible or it's got to be actionable intelligence. These people were just throwing money, hundreds of thousands. And it's like, dude, this guy is a killer. Like, you've done no vetting of this person. You have no idea who this person is, right? And now we raid the house. And of course, now it's going to be reflected in the report, not to hammer anybody, to make somebody feel bad, but I'm not going to not put this in the report that we confiscated $50,000 in $100 bills in serial number order, because there's got to be some accounting for that. And there is accounting for that. And they know who gave them. You know as well as I do, when you sign for money to do operations within the NYPD, you better have it down to the penny when you inventory it. If you make a mistake on the accounting, it's a serious investigation. So it got to the point, honestly, John and Eric, we were confiscating so much money, I wouldn't count it anymore. I would just put it in a bag and I would give it to the lieutenant. I'm like, I'm not counting this anymore because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm not going to get done until probably 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And if I'm off by $1, or, sometimes it was mixed money, it would be a combination of American dollars and it would be a combination of Iraqi money. I'm like, I'm not counting this. I'm just not going to do it anymore. And I would just give it to him literally in a plastic Ziploc bag. Say, here you go.
Yeah, when Iraqi money would have a pile like this and be worth like 30 cents.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and Chris, what was happening to all these targets? As well, obviously, I mean, a lot of them were being paid by the United States government while creating bombs, while helping to kill U.S. soldiers. But on top of that, like, what would happen to them? Like, when they were taken from you, would anything happen to them? Like, criminally? Did they go to jail? Like, to your knowledge, like, what happened to any of these people?
Well, I know some of them were definitely released because they felt like in the Iraqi court system there wasn't enough legal justification. It's funny about Iraqis, and Eric could probably testify to this. They don't believe in fingerprints because we were using what they call a bat and hide system. So it's basically a biometric tool where it takes a picture of your iris, takes a picture of your fingerprint, and they put it into a database, and then we could see if this guy was pre-existingly arrested, or was he at the scene of another bombing site, etc. Like basic crime scene 101. But they didn't believe if you had fingerprints on a piece of tape that was wrapped around a bomb that in fact was that guy's fingerprint, even though it clearly was. But they believed in text messaging. So it's like, so they believe in things that you could send through the air magically, right, to another phone, but they don't believe in a fingerprint that I could show you is physically attached to this person, that belongs to this person. So that's what you're dealing with in their type of judicial system. So to be honest with you, the majority of them probably after we left, they certainly all got released. The place fell apart, it wasn't for all the money we spent there, which was really, to me, it was a waste of money in terms of trying to stand up their legal judicial system and their police department. At the end of the day, it was all sectarian. If you were Shiite or you were a Sunni, that's the way it rolled. Period. So,
when you were working out in Iraq, did you travel to different cities? Like I said, I spent majority of my time in Basra, a little bit in Nasiriyah. I did go to Babylon. I thought that was a cool place. All the marble palaces was pretty amazing. So, what cities did you travel through? What types of stuff did you see? And what type of vehicles were you using there? I know a lot of contractors were using some interesting civilian vehicles to try to blend in. What type of vehicles were you utilizing there?
Well, when we rolled out with our team, we used an RG-33 because it fit everybody in there. So you have to understand. So I rolled with an EOD tech. I rolled with Matt, which was amazing when Matt came out on the target, because it's almost like you're the architect. So if you wrote the targeting package, you're very familiar with it and all the little nuances. We had a K9 unit. We actually had a UAV team that would come out. So we would have downward telemetry. So we knew if we had any squirters, people that were running out of the house. So we had that a live feed in real time. So there would be probably 6 to 7 people on the team. And then, of course, you have your whole security element. That's the regular green suiters. So our drivers were green suiters, and the radio operator, he was a green suiter. And the units that we roll with, that's the RG-33. The units that we roll with Sergeant Dave, he loved the Humvees. He did not want to use anything other than a Humvee. And we would be going blacked out with night vision goggles down some road in Iraq at 50 miles an hour. And, you're hoping that, this thing is top heavy. You realize that this thing could tip over, and you probably will. You're probably going to get crushed by your partner on the other seat on the other side. So, but that's primarily what we use in terms of transportation. In terms of cities that I've gone to, we pretty much were in southern Baghdad, East Rashid. Again, you get an area of operation. That's the other thing, which is relatable to the police department. In the NYPD, you start an investigation and starts out, I'm just going to say, the 106 precinct, right? And then it migrates to the 102, or it migrates to Brooklyn. If you're getting a search warrant, you got to basically, get a hold of the commanding officer of that local precinct and saying, hey, we're going to whack some guy, and it's going to happen at 4 o'clock in the morning, to give him a heads up. And you try to limit that, obviously, as much as you can. In the Army, oh my God, it's even worse, because when are we doing these operations? At 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, who wants to wake up the colonel at 3 o'clock in the morning from the adjoining area of operation and ask him, can we come into your area of operation? We have a bad guy. Nobody wants to do that. You would say, Chris, you're exaggerating. I'm not, I promise you. I'm not exaggerating. That's how petty it was, that they didn't want anyone going into their area of operation. And you had to get approval. There was no like, well, we're just going to skip over the boundary line and hope everything works out. You can't do that. You cannot do that. So, whereas in the NYPD, it's more of a courtesy, but you have the authority of the search warrant to execute the search warrant. You know what I mean? It's a professional courtesy, obviously, and of course you want engagement from that commanding officer in the NYPD. But realistically, even if he doesn't want to give you engagement or help, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to roll it. So.
What was your motivating factor behind writing the book, Brooklyn to Baghdad? Like what prompted you to do that? And like, what were you trying to express to the American people?
Well, it was one of these things where I was keeping a journal the whole time I was there, because toward the end, like when the new leadership came in after like 6 months, we were so busy, and I was just like, if I don't write this stuff down, I won't be able to remember it. I'm just not that way. So I was like, I would have to either write it down right before I went to bed, or start writing as soon as I got up, or whatever. But the motivation was, there was some great, amazing work being done in spite of the politics. Forget the politics. Everybody's got an opinion, and that's just part of life. But the bravery and the energy of these young people, feeling like, again, we didn't solve the world problems, but we made sure that this guy didn't blow up another soldier. So we had a 2-month period where we didn't have a single IED event in our area of operation. So it's almost like, street crime and narcotics comes into an area, they flood it. Yeah, you didn't solve the problem. Those people went somewhere else, but they're not blowing up soldiers here. So I wanted that part of the story to be told. The other part I wanted to be told was the level of frustration that I was feeling, that more could be done. And I wanted this story to be told about, even a world away, there's people that are, I wouldn't say intentionally undermining the success, but they're certainly limiting the success of this. The war could have been solved a long time ago. And everybody, knows about, the industrial military complex, things that they sell that are absolutely obsolete before it gets fielded. I mean, the Humvee is like the perfect example. If you were a Humvee salesman, you're a billionaire, because every time they sold a Humvee, they just added on more crap. So it started out as a soft skin, then it became up armored. Then you had to change the suspension, bigger oil cooler, bigger transmission. You know what I mean? Hydraulics to actuate the door because the door weighs 600 pounds, and if it doesn't open, like on and on and on and on and on. And so that part, I wanted to let people know as well that at the end of the day, basic law enforcement 101. I didn't invent this concept. Basic police work had a greater effect in terms of countering the IED problems in Iraq and Afghanistan than any other Gucci gear and gee whiz thing from the military-industrial complex, period. Because without real intel, you have nothing. You have a guess. You can drop a bomb and you think you're solving a problem, but again, like I said before, they're just moving somewhere else. You haven't solved the problem.
Outstanding. You have an impressive resume. I mean, you served in the Marine Corps, you served in the police department, and you served in an illustrious unit as intel, basically with counterterrorism, right? Doing some real operations. And then you expanded on, you could have retired, you could have been sitting back, and then you go out and you serve in Iraq as a civilian contractor with real influence on the military. I'm super impressed, and I appreciate it, especially, serving myself. And you're right. I mean, it's unfortunate, but sometimes with big Army and even in the Marine Corps, that things just, it's as prepared as possible. But you're talking about large units and they're vast. Even when I landed in Iraq, I drove Humvees. I was a motor transport operator. And when I initially got to Iraq, the Humvees that I had were soft covered Humvees. So, because every colonel wanted to get there as fast as possible. They wanted to get there because, just as you said, to make an impression. If they do well, then they get promoted. They get the star on their shoulder. So I landed in Iraq with green camouflage, green cami Humvees, soft covers. Oh my God, what's happening here? So finally, they had to ship the stuff in to start getting the hard covered vehicles and the desert cami. So I appreciate it so much. So you talked about big Army, right? So did you have any relationship with, you were a fellow Marine. Did you have any relationship, and did you work with the Marines out in Iraq also? I know that the Marine Corps, I came with the first MEF, the first Marine Expeditionary Force. We came up at the other flank. The Army came up towards Baghdad, and we came up through Basra. But at this time, it's now 5 years later. So did you have any relationship with the Marines there?
No, actually, I didn't. And when they were picking people for this unit, I approached the program manager, and at that particular time, there was a Marine element that was in Afghanistan. I said, I'd like to go back to my roots if possible. And they said, no, we're going to send you to Iraq. My interaction with the Marine Corps was only if I went to Victory Base and I saw them, at like any number of like fast food joints and stuff that you could get, like a Burger King hamburger or some kind of, coffee or something. I didn't have Starbucks, but the green beans was like a main staple over there. It was like the next best thing to Starbucks. So, but no, I didn't really interact with the Marine Corps. I had a great relationship with the Army, the unit, like I was mentioning to with Sergeant Dave. I mean, we barbecued together. We shared all kinds of things together. I mean, we were very, very close. And it got to the point, honestly, the relationship was so strong. They're like, we're not going out. Like if we had a down day just because of sleep deprivation, they're like, all right, we're not going out. We'll take the target tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow because we're not going out with the Phoenix team because at the end of the day, that level of trust was so palpable and so real. They were like, no, we're not going to go because they knew their left and rights, but they also knew that like if we go out there and we don't have success, it's going to be because we didn't bring them. We didn't wait. We weren't patient enough to bring them, if that makes sense.
Chris, I gotta ask you. You served in the police department. Over 20 years. You were involved in a shooting. You were a Marine. You go do these high profile. You go after high value targets. I mean, unfortunately, I know. You worked through 9/11. You worked in New York City when New York City was a city of crime. You've experienced death. You've experienced loss of teammates. What is it like for you being a civilian at this point in your life?
Well, I'm very blessed. I have a great wife. I'm married 30 years. Actually, we celebrated our 30th anniversary this past December. I have two amazing children. My son, which I've spoken to before. He's involved in law enforcement. He works in Washington, not the FBI. I have an amazing daughter. She's involved in a serious relationship with a Marine Corps captain. She works in Virginia Beach for a major corporation in the back office area. So my civilian life right now, I work in a school. I'm surrounded by elementary school children. I'm not going to say the school, but that level of satisfaction and interaction is amazing. I never thought I would feel that way because I was like, I'm used to doing what we all did, being a cop and chasing the bad guy and the excitement, and then going out afterwards and maybe having a beer with your buddies. But this is a whole different life cycle that I'm truly enjoying right now, and the pace is great. The people and the teachers and the parents, little kids just randomly coming up and hugging you. I mean, it's like it's hard to explain that level of emotion. Getting back to in the paradigm, when you're working what we were doing in Iraq, that amount of adrenaline and level of satisfaction it's hard to put into words. But when you leave that, it's like it's you feel, I don't want to say useless because I don't want it to sound that way, but you just feel like that could continue on forever. You would want that to continue on forever, but obviously it's not physically possible, and it's probably not healthy mentally and physically either. But doing what I'm doing now, working with children in a school environment, I never thought I would say I would love my job again. I totally love my job.
I love it because, and I say this all the time, and I used to tell the cops that worked for me, and I was a crime sergeant, I was a special operations lieutenant, and I would say, make this a part of your story. Don't make it your whole story. There's so many cops, they're afraid to retire because they don't know what's on the other side. I would hear, well, what am I going to do? Well, I said, there's a whole world out there of things to do. And that's what you did. You took on the whole world of doing vast different things and made that a part of your story, right? You were a Marine. You worked at the NYPD. You were overseas in Iraq. And now you have another part of your story, working in school. And that's what life is about, versatility. And that's why I say don't be so mundane to just be delved into one thing. Go out there, expand yourself. There's so much out there. So let's talk about current news, right? We've all done investigations, John, myself, you, and we see what's happening on the streets right now. And we know it's paid agitators. These are the same people that took part in George Floyd riots. These are the same people that occupied Wall Street. It's my opinion. Now, LA is not dry, but this is a dry run. Based on what I see, this is a dry run for what's going to come because LA is much easier to maneuver than New York. Now, there's a lot of intel that's been gathered from the George Floyd riots. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of influence. There's a lot that's been learned to make this grow catastrophically even more further than it is right now. So what are you seeing right now? Because in my opinion, this could be shut down. I think it's all political theater. What are you seeing in the LA riots? And do you believe that this is done by design? Because in my opinion, this could be shut down immediately, but they're allowing it to happen. And what's going to happen in New York is going to be far worse.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I believe that these are professional agitators. I believe they're organized and they're funded. It's almost like the whole Black Lives Matter theater all over again. I agree with you 100%. And again, at the end of the day, when you start arresting these people and really applying the law where, they actually have to do some jail time, that's the problem, I think. There's a precedent that's being set that basically some judge will come in and say, well, yeah, you say he threw a brick at you and you suffered an injury, but we're just going to, whittle it down to basically, time served, and they get out. So there's no message from a legal standpoint. Now, I know the Trump administration and Pam Bondi, the attorney general, would probably have a different opinion about that, but I'm very suspect of whether or not there's going to be any real severe consequences for this, because this can't go on. ICE officers being outed, doxxed, their families being put at risk. I mean, it's really unconscionable. And again, people would say, not of us, of course, from the NYPD, people would say, oh, the police, the police, we love the police. We love the police. Yes, there are people, the majority of the people do love the police, but there is a group of people that absolutely hate the police for whatever reason. And more so now because Donald Trump is the president. That's my opinion. That's my belief. So you add the fact that Donald Trump is the president, and you have a police action where they're trying to remove illegal criminals, violent people, and you have the perfect formula for like, well, these people are victims, and the police. This is a police state, and they're overstepping their bounds, and we're going to get a judge to put an injunction on Trump for this and the National Guard for that. I mean, I don't know if it can get worse, but hopefully it doesn't get worse. Hopefully that, they start doing some serious, but unfortunately, as time has shown, somebody's going to get seriously hurt and or shot by the police, and that person will become the new martyr, and it'll reignite all over again. And meanwhile, this poor cop was defending himself, defending his partner. They're throwing cinder blocks through the windshields of police cars. Now, I don't know. I kind of remember like use of deadly physical force and the force continuum, and what justifies, the use of deadly physical force. And I'm kind of thinking that probably does. But the problem is, from city to city, and rules of engagement and the politics, as you know, getting involved in this. I mean, like the LA police chief, from what I understand, from what I'm reading on the wires, waited 2 hours before he even assembled a police action to kind of quell the first riot. So again, was that his choice or his decision? Probably not. But at the same time, I'm saying to myself, look, I have 30 years in law enforcement. I don't know how many years the LA police chief has. And I'll interchange it with the people that are going on in New York, in the NYPD, which John and I could have some really interesting conversations about one friend in particular. But you could at the end of the day, I'm the police chief. I'm telling you, this is what needs to be done. If some politician told me, and all things being equal, that I have 30 years on, and said, no, Chris, you're not doing that, I'm like, well, you know what? I'm resigning effective immediately. This is your baby. Because I'm not attaching myself to this. I am not attaching myself to this failure of leadership and failure to the citizens of whether it's Los Angeles or New York City. Because I have a reputation, and my reputation is going to be like, I told you what we needed to do, and you said no. I'm out.
Chris, me and you did a media hit, I'm going to say like a year and a half ago. We were discussing nightly takeovers of critical infrastructure in New York City. And when I went, I brought up the fact, I said, what are we doing to identify the people who are paying these paid agitators? And what are we doing to go after the paid agitators? It's my belief today. It's been my belief for over 2 years. It's still my belief today watching this. I know the Trump administration has came in, but your local police department leadership is setting the rank and file up for failure. You touched on it a little here. And the reason I'm saying that is because I agree with you. I totally agree with you that the criminal justice system needs to do a job as a whole. The district attorneys need to be on board. The courts need to be on board. 100%. But I personally feel that the leadership of these big blue city police departments are failing the rank and file, because what we see is when these protests are no longer First Amendment activities and they turn illegal, even if they don't turn violent, they just start to take over streets, or they start to be disorderly, or they're forms of civil disobedience, or in fact they turn violent and they start assaulting people, robbing people, killing people, burning cars, taking over critical infrastructure. When these individuals are arrested, they're undercharged, they're issued DATs, there's no intelligence apparatus to gain information from them to see, are you here? Why'd you come here from Ohio? Why'd you come to New York City from Ohio today to get arrested? Like, why were you here today? So like our intelligence apparatus it's not there at all, because we're undercharging, we're releasing people, we're not gathering information. So we'll never make those connections to, oh, in fact, is this part of a larger operation? No, everything we're saying here could just continue to be painted as a conspiracy theory. It's not accurate. We don't know how those pallets of bricks got there. We don't know where all these lawyers are coming from with their orange vests and their radios. We don't know who's paying the cameraman. We don't know who's supplying the snacks and the refreshments. And, those guys are just a bunch of crazy retired wackos, and they don't know what they're talking about. So sorry for my long-winded rant, but this leads me to my question. If in fact these protests and these that turn illegal are paid agitators coming in, and there is somebody at the top. Do you feel if there was proper leadership in charge, how long do you feel that would take to identify who was actually paying who and who were the paid agitators?
I think it could be done in a day. I mean, once you have a comparative, so you have one person from Ohio, and now you have two people from Ohio. Now you have three people from Ohio. Well, and they don't know each other. You know, it's one of these things where and again, I say this all as much as I think the leadership in the NYPD is failing, and we could talk about that forever. The people in the intelligence division, and especially in the analytical side of things, are second to none in the world. I mean, and at the end of the day, human intelligence is what drives the intel picture. So without the actual cop on the ground, debriefing this person, getting his bona fides, his pocket litter that's in his wallet, every little intricate detail, phone numbers, credit cards, anything of similarity, like just dump it all into that Palantir search engine. It could be done in a day once you have some comparative analysis. And then the funding, again, I'm not like a financial guy. Like if you said, Chris, I want you to run a financial crime, I'd be like, okay, I don't think I'm coming in today because I'm really no good at that. I'm not that type of person. I'm more of a, let me talk to somebody and see if I can get information, and through that kind of communication. But there are people that are gifted in that financial exploitation, where they could take somebody's credit card and throw it into some database or a Venmo account and just go wild with it and say, wait a minute, this guy is from Ohio and this guy is from North Carolina, but they all share the same Venmo account, and meanwhile they don't know each other. So again, those people on the backside, on the analytical side, to answer your question, a day they can figure this out, and maybe they already have, but the political ramifications is just so damning for them to say anything that they're not going to do it. I mean, again, at the end of the day, when I shave my face in the morning, I look at myself, I'm like, I did the right thing. I try to do the right thing every day. I fall short. I'm not perfect. I'm not holding myself up as the mantle of morality, and I'm a saint. I've made a lot of mistakes, done a lot of stupid things in my career, and continue to make mistakes in my personal life. But I'm not going to shirk my responsibility in terms of turning a blind eye when it comes to the safety and security of people, regardless of the city, whether it's where I live right now in Roanoke, Virginia, or whether it's in the NYPD in New York City. I'm not doing that.
You touch on a very significant point that we talk often on this podcast. We talk about masculinity. We talk about being an alpha male. We talk about having morality, having moral principle. And that's so important when it comes to leadership. And that's where it's failing, right? Yes, we have politics. We have problems with media. We have a problem with legislation. It's been going on for years. And there's no doubt about it. And that's a major contributing factor to crime going up or crime going down. But still, I believe that it's men like yourself and myself and John and Marlon and members of this Finest Unfiltered, Rob Lukash and Ron Layson and Sal Greco, that have that morality, that which is why we moved on in our lives. Because I believe that if we were still working for the NYPD, we would not stand for this and say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? How are we allowing this to happen? And we would say, if we're not going to allow this to happen, well, we don't want to be a part of it. But what did we see? We saw pandering chiefs that are only concerned, self-serving, because they want to pave the pathway for their offspring, or they want to get that star on your shoulder that you talk about. And we see chiefs kneel down in the past.
Oh my God.
And it may happen again. It may happen again that chiefs kneel down. It's so important to get that intel, because the bottom line is right now what they do is they're just putting a band-aid, even if they make big arrests. We have to follow the money. We have to go after those that are orchestrating this. This is strategically orchestrated. So how would you go after things that were strategically orchestrated in Iraq that could be utilized here with boots on the ground in LA, which is now transversing into New York?
Well, first and foremost, you start with the basic arrest, and you do an intensive debrief. You do a deep dive into this person's background, and then you basically say, "Hey, look, the president and the U.S. attorney Pam Bondi has said this qualifies for domestic terrorism. You're going to do a minimum, and it would just be this matter of factly. you're going to do a minimum of whatever it is, 5 years, 10 years, period. But if you don't cooperate, you're going to do the full ride, 15 years, whatever it is that they set the boundaries for. And if the person says, yeah, I'm not saying another word, I'm like, fine, and just move on to the next one. And eventually people will be like, they were serious about that, especially when they read off the indictment, right? And their lack of, cooperation, and people start going to jail. I mean, if you had said this, like, and again, we're when you look at January 6th and how they made this to be like, Pearl Harbor and all this stuff, and 9/11, like, we're really discussing number one. But the fact that they could find somebody in Alaska through the use of a credit card and spend infinite amount of resources to find that person and throw that person in jail, which is fact, not fiction. There should be no logical reason why it can't be replicated now going forward with these riots. Because if they don't do that, we're not going to. I don't want to be this holy roly guy. We're not going to have a country if this is allowed to happen every time somebody doesn't agree that a president is in office. I mean, I thought Biden was a disaster, coming right out and saying I voted for Trump both times. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to be throwing bricks at the police because I'm unhappy with the president. I'm as unhappy as I was with what was going on with the January 6th people. I'm not going to go to a federal detention facility and assault the police officers there because I disagree with that as well. It's just, but that's what we've raised the level of tolerance for so much stuff that it's almost like the cat's out of the bag now. We gotta rein it back in, and it's got to be a law and order, and it's not painful for us, the normal people that just want to get on with their lives and families and loved ones. But it's abnormal for these people. They don't like being told what to do, period, by anybody.
To me, it's just hard to watch. It's hard to watch the media narratives, and it's hard to watch what I'm seeing, because what I see is the demonization of law enforcement, right? And then I see the good people being frustrated with law enforcement. And so, like, for 2 years, I've been trying to say, it's not the cops. Look up top. Because like you said, Intel has it. We have an Intel analyst on here now from the NYPD, Marlon Bethel, who was fired because he didn't take a COVID vaccine, but was very good at his job, very good intelligence detective. It still shows how good he is with his work that he does, how good he was and how vital he was. But we could solve it like that, and for a while we were hearing from the brass in the NYPD, we're going to start going after the funders of the people who are coordinating takeovers of critical infrastructure, and it never happened. And now we're back, and it's a different cause, and it's a different flag. I always say, like, we look at this kid, Relly Rel. I'll just give one example of him, Relly Rebel, or whatever his name is. The kid is like, he's like a NASCAR driver. You could put any flag you want on him. He's out at every protest. He's screaming in the cops' faces. You probably see him, big, tall, skinny kid, definitely skip legs day. He walks around, he gets in all the cops' faces. And now in like the NYPD, they're trained to let people yell in their face. I still say that is not accurate. That's harassment of a police officer. It's disorderly conduct. It's causing a crowd to form. You should never let anyone this close to your face. But we've seen this kid since the BLM riots out on the streets every night with different flags, different banners, different T-shirts. And I'm like, you can't tell me this kid's not making money. You can't tell me that he's not making money. Somebody's giving him these clothes. Somebody's giving him food. And court case after court case, he's coming with legal representation. He's got backing of city council, and I'm like, and I'm sitting there and I'm going, who's ultimately getting blamed? Everyone, regardless of what side you're on. But if you're a decent person and not actually out there on the street, you're blaming the rank and file cop for allowing him to do what he's doing, when it's not them. It's the leadership of the city. It's the politics. And you painted that portrait throughout your entire career, both in the NYPD and then after, even overseas. And this is the problem that the boots on the ground face. And it's sad to watch, dude. It honestly is. And I don't know how to rectify it other than by putting better politicians in place, if there are even any, because I'm starting to be like, what the hell are we doing here? What's going on here?
Yeah, it's challenging it's frustrating. Sometimes I tune out because it's just like I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. And again, you see the comments that people write about, like, oh, if that was me and when I was a cop back in the day, and I'm like, and all of that is true. I mean, like, it was ask, tell, and then turn around. And then, if they turned around, everything was fine. If they didn't turn around, then there was a problem. And that problem was borne out on your reaction, not my reaction. Okay. And so there was a level of fear. I hate to say that, but there was a level of fear and definitely a due regard and respect for police officers. That's gone. Like, if you got in, listen, if you got in my face and you closed that, what I would consider my zone of safety, there would be a problem. There would be a physical altercation. That just wouldn't happen. Now, as you say, this guy, Rally Rebel, whatever the fellow's name is, getting right up in the face and just basically you're smelling his breath and he's spitting on you at the same time. That would have never happened, but now that happens, and that's more accepted. And again, when that chief took the knee during Black Lives Matter, I was like, holy crap, I didn't see that. I did not see that. And there's another guy that you know as well as I do, John, because we've spoken about him. I mean, he's appearing on talk shows with Al Sharpton. I mean, so this is the king of racial division and racial huckstering in New York City, and you're sitting down as if he's some legitimate person. Like, listen, if you invited me to come on, I don't care if it was Fox News, it was NewsMax, or any number of media outlets, and they said, oh, as a co-panelist, Al Sharpton's going to be there. I'm like, I'm out. I go, because I have a professional reputation, and that doesn't include sitting with this guy who is just a complete fraud. But some people, it's almost like they sold their soul. They don't care. They're so in love with themselves, and they're like a vanity project that they will sit with that guy and give him legitimate, which in turn comes back to what we were talking about. It's a leadership. It's failed leadership. You are legitimizing this person, and he's not a legitimate person. He's a problem. He's a part of the problem. And anything that had a racial component attached to it, he was front and center right there to lambaste the police, indict the police before fact one was even brought out in the investigation.
Yesterday, I put out a post on X, and it was meant to be funny, but it's legit and it's truthful at the same time, because I put out a video and it was an aerial capture, and it was live of what was going on at the Holland Tunnel, and it was just crowds of people everywhere, and it looked like a disaster. And you could see it's at that point, it's at that boiling point where it's about to implode. And I said, you know what? Those unvaccinated cops and cops with high CCRBs, and I'm talking about myself also, they're looking pretty good right now, right? Those are the cops that we want in the street, right? The unvaccinated cops that actually question what was going on. The ones with the high CCRBs that were actually doing police work. This is the picture right here. And the reason why is because it goes into the emasculation of police departments throughout this entire country in blue cities, especially NYPD, the emasculation, and it's caused by the leadership. The leadership is so important. The leadership can make an organization crumble or it can make it thrive. And the leadership that we have right now is just cowardice, and it's self-serving because they paved the way for their offspring, and they want to get promoted for themselves, and they've weakened the department at the knees. The NYPD used to be the GOAT of policing. Now it's an embarrassment. And it's an embarrassment example for the entire country. And with that leadership, it's just an outstanding failure. So you touched on a good point. You talked about that human element of intel. So we talk about this all the time. And I'm a firm believer that's the most important aspect when it comes to intel. Drones, other aerial type views, utilizing robots. And you talked about Palantir with AI is fantastic, but that's supplemental. In my opinion, they're trying to emasculate these police departments to move completely to AI and to remove that human element. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, listen, we always used to say, what was the expression? The bad guy's not in the computer. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, the crime is going to be solved by somebody actually talking to somebody and getting that information. I don't know if you guys know a good friend of mine, Tommy Dades, but he was legendary in Italian organized crime. Yep. And he wrote a book called Friends of the Family. I'm very close to him, super friend. He was like a mentor to me. He taught me communication and how to talk to people, because I got to be honest with you, I was great at putting handcuffs and chasing people and all that kind of crazy stuff that we all did as young cops. But then the subtleties of how to conduct an interview and how to talk to people and build a rapport. And one of the things I learned from him, I learned many things from him, but one of the things I learned from him in terms of gaining the trust of a bad guy and people that are not in law enforcement would be like, what are you talking about? Gaining the trust of a bad guy. If you promise somebody something that's in the criminal realm and you can't deliver that, your reputation in the criminal realm is done. So you would say, well, what do I care what this person thinks of me? Well, because that guy, when he gets out of jail, the next person you arrest, if he knows that person, they're going to be like, hey, that guy, Chris, don't believe anything he says. He's full of baloney. He's totally full of baloney. So my friend Tommy taught me that from very early on. So a lot of the cases that he solved, to include the book of Friends of the Family, were based on that trust factor, that if he said he was going to do something or said, look, I can't do that, but I'll at least make an appeal to the district attorney about it, they believed him and they would give him information. Conversely, you have people all the time, they come in there and we know who they are. They talk loud, they slap this paper folder on the desk. If you don't give me what I want, or you lie to me at any point during this investigation, it's an automatic 3 years. And they're like, okay, fine. And then they just say, lawyer. So you came in there for a 1 minute conversation versus somebody that's in there for 2 or 3 hours. And yeah, sometimes it's mind numbing to hear them ramble on. But at the same time, if he's giving you information and he's communicating, that's what we want. But that, I don't know if that still exists. I'd like to think that there's still great detectives out there doing that. But again, going back to what John was saying and what you were saying, Eric, from a leadership point, they might be like, move on, move along. We don't have time for this. Move along, as opposed to let me run this to the ground and see where it goes.
No, yeah, character follows you through everywhere, right? It really does. I was the assistant field intelligence officer when I was a cop, when they first created that position, like before they actually made it a thing. And I didn't want it. Like, I liked doing anti-crime. I didn't want to talk to perps. I didn't want to sign up CIs. But the reason that they gave it to me is because the perps would ask to talk to me. But I never, like, I thought I was terrible at it, honestly. I mean, I did get a lot of search warrants, but when somebody would tell me something, it would bother me. I'd be like, why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me your brother-in-law has a gun? Why are you telling me your best friend has a gun in his house? Like, I'm always thinking like why they're doing this. So I was like, to me, I was like, I never trusted them, but like, the fact of the matter was they trusted me because I would tell them how I felt or what I said. And that's why I was even able to get search warrants, even though I wasn't of that mindset. All right, let me talk to this guy and get on his good side. And I didn't give a shit if he told me anything like that. That's really how I was. I didn't care. Like, and then when they would tell me something, I'd beat them up a little bit about it. I'd be like, so you're telling me, so yeah, no, I totally agree with that stance, is that like your character is going to follow you on the street too. I just think at the time when we were cops, it was just, again, we were supported. There was that structure, that intelligence building structure was there. The criminal justice system supported us. The DAs supported us. The judges supported us. The public supported us. And again, I feel like, I don't feel like we're a better generation or we're different stock or our blood's different or we have more testosterone. I don't feel like that at all. I just feel like the system that's been put in place for these young guys and girls is failing. That's how I look at it. I felt like the police department made me. I didn't make the police department. They built John, they built Chris, they built Eric. Yeah, we brought in our own character and our morals from our families and our faith, but they taught us how to do police work. They taught us, they gave you that intelligence structure that you took overseas, right? And it was effective there too. And I don't know, like that's just, it's just so disheartening to watch, dude. It really is. And I agree with you. I tune out. That's why I don't have the media. It's funny, like people, like, I stay up on the news a little bit through social media, and that's really it. Mostly through friends texting me and telling me what the hell's going on, because I can't watch the news. I'll like, if I see a clip with you on it, 100% I'll watch it. But but like you're one of the few guys that I respect out there, like in the media, because I know you're giving your honest opinion. And like I see a lot of guys out there in the media, and I'm like, like whether I agree with you or not, like I don't think that's your honest opinion. And like, so I always appreciate you being on there, because I was like, other than myself, I hadn't really seen many people that I'm like, you know what, this guy's actually saying what he thinks, and you're one of them. So I super appreciate you still continuing to serve even after you served so many years.
That John, I appreciate that, and I respect that more than you know. I value your judgment and your friendship, and I appreciate those kind words that you just said, very much so.
Chris, I say it again, Semper Fi, I'm super impressed with your resume, and you are even more impressive person than, this is the first time I get a chance to speak to you. John and I talk all the time about your attributes. It's just so impressive, and being a fellow Marine, you were already a brother to me, and I'm just impressed with your record and so humble about it, because there's no doubt about it. You've done some high-speed stuff, and you kind of downplay it and make it so humble, and I know the stuff that you're doing out there was super impressive. And I thank you, because I served in Iraq, and I thank you that you were out there trying to save soldiers, sailors, and Marines. So with that being said, we have terrorism going on overseas, and we have domestic terrorism, right? So from your experience in Intel and your experience in the NYPD and overseas, what would you say is something Americans should know about counterterrorism? What's something they should know about counterterrorism as far as here in America and overseas, as far as on a law enforcement aspect, and also something that civilians should be aware of? What's something that they should look out for? Maybe any tips you could have for people in their daily lives?
Well, what I would say is the level of depravity from the radical Islamic faith is something that is foreign to us. I mean, even in the criminal world, there are some moral boundaries, although now it seems like there are no moral boundaries. But in the criminal realm, there's certain things, children, women, things like that. In the terrorism world, the indoctrination process, the splitting process, the psychological process of the children in terms of fomenting a hatred that's really, it's just an ideology. It's not a value-based hatred. There's nothing there. Is something that is, as a Western person, you can't appreciate what that means. Like, as close as you can get, and I have a lot of friends that are Jordanians. I worked with Jordanians in the UAE for about 5 years. As close as you can get, at the end of the day, you are not a Muslim brother. That's just the reality. If it comes down to picking you or a Muslim brother, well, they're not picking you. And that's a harsh reality to accept. And people could say, Chris, that's not true. I have very, very close Muslims. I'm just telling you about the radical Muslim and radical Islamic faith. Those people will say and do anything to ingratiate themselves with you, and then the next day kill your whole family. They have no problem or qualm about doing that matter of factly. They don't, because they look at you as you're subhuman. You are not a Muslim. And when people can't accept that or refuse to accept that, that's what you're dealing with in terms of a terrorist element and a radicalization. And this whole thing with the anti-Semitism that's been going on in the campuses, and the professors that have been, created a breeding ground for this kind of ideology and hate against American citizens who just happen to be Jewish by faith, is really reprehensible. It's really, I didn't think I would ever see that. And working in Brooklyn and working in the Jewish communities and working in Crown Heights, and you're like, how could this possibly be happening? Like, how do we even get here? But in terms of counterterrorism efforts, the mindset needs to be is you can't think like a Westerner. You have to think like the mind of a terrorist who will say and do anything to kill people. That's their whole thing, because they are promised that they're going into an afterlife that even if I get killed, it's going to be better than here. I'm going to be martyred. But to see that and actually feel that and believe that is a hard thing to do, because it's just not like us to be that way. It's not in our nature to look at somebody and hate somebody, hate because of of their religion or their faith. And I'm not saying I hate these people, but that ideology is very, very real, and their mindset is determined. And if you look at what's going on, not to get too far off subject, but if you look at what's going on in Plano, Texas, and I can speak intelligently about that because I was a cop in Plano, Texas for 2 years. The fact that they want to build a Sharia law compound, and that it's even being debated that whether or not they're going to be getting a building permit for all of this, is the beginning of the end. And it's been building. It's been building, as John was saying earlier too, Eric, in these blue cities. It's been building, and it continues to be built because we just keep moving the goal line a little bit further in terms of appeasement because, well, look, we want to be as inclusive as possible. And now we have anywhere from 10 to 15 million people in this country, and we don't know anything about them, and we have to get them out.
You know, Chris, it's super impressive. That's something that you left out in your story. NYPD, you're also a Marine. You also served overseas. You're working at a school, and you're also a cop in Plano, Texas. When did you do that?
From 1985 to 1987.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. It was a great little town, but at the time it was a smaller town. Now it's actually a huge town and a very, very big. I don't know how many police officers they have. I would say probably at least 400. When I was there, it was probably about 140, 150. So it's a very modern police department. But you know, my heart was always in New York, and I always wanted to be a cop in the NYPD. And I said, you know, like, when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, I got to do it because. And again, we've all had like great careers within the NYPD. I tell people all the time, like, I had an amazing career in the police department. I clarify by saying, not because I'm amazing, but because I got to do all the things I saw on TV pretty much, with the exception of jumping out of a helicopter and rappelling onto a rooftop. I mean, I got to do all these really, really fun things that in a smaller police department, you're just not going to be able to do because it doesn't lend itself to that. You know, it's a smaller police department. Promotion is limited. Lateral promotions are limited, things like that. In the NYPD, if you're a good cop and you work, sooner or later, if you knock on the door, you're going to get in. It's just a matter of time. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And some people have, as John was saying, have like a family person that kind of paves the way. But, I got to live out my fantasies in the NYPD in terms of being a real cop, what I envisioned myself before I joined the NYPD.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I still have the itch. I'm not even 45 yet. Like, I'll be 45 soon, but like, I still got the itch. And like, I speak to sheriffs and I speak to a lot of people, and they're like, "Oh, you should come here, you should do that." And I'm like, I'm gonna say the worst thing right now, but it's really how I feel. And I know a lot of people are gonna be mad about it, but I'm like, it's just how I feel. And I've said it to people. I'm like, dude, I played for the Yankees. Like, I don't wanna play for a farm team. Like, I just don't, like, I'm like, I got to work in a city I love, in the city I grew up in, the city I live in my whole life. And by the way, it's the pinnacle of law enforcement. Like, I've got to see and do everything. You know what I mean? I'm like, I played for the Yankees. It's very hard to like think of that. And then me to go to like somewhere else that I don't even really know the area, and I don't know the perps, and I don't know. And I'm like, I can't even think about it because my whole life has always been New York City. And that's not a knock on you guys that work elsewhere. You know what I mean? It's not. It's just how I look at it. It's how I really feel about it. We always say like about this show that we give you the life of and experiences from people who had a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. And I really believe that, dude. I 100% believe that, and so, yeah, it's NYPD, like, as much as I could bash it, it's an amazing career. As much as I'm not happy with the route it's taken these last 8 years, probably more, 12 years now going on now almost. It still was an amazing experience. Wouldn't change it for the world. Retired Deputy Chief Rob Lukash, he says, Chris, thank you for your service to our city and country. You exemplify a true American hero. And then later on today at 5:05 p.m., on the by Chief Luke Cash and Inspector Ron Layson. They'll be talking about riot season 2025. They're going to go into the LA riots, give their opinions from an executive standpoint here at the Finest Unfiltered. They're also going to have Jim Walden on, New York City mayoral candidate. He'll be joining them around 5:30 to discuss his plan to abolish not only the CCRB, but as well as the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau and replace them with a public corruption integrity unit. So I'll be checking that out later. I hope you guys join that. Chris, I have all the links for your book and everything and all the places that we're streaming and we're live right now. Anything we missed here? Anything that you want to bring out before we go?
I just want to say thank you to both of you, yourself and Erica. I truly appreciate it. It's long overdue, and it's funny that you mentioned that one media shot that we ended up on together, and we had communicated before that. It was like, and of course, sometimes they tell you who you're going to be on with, and sometimes they don't. I was like, oh, that was great, like it was almost like it was like a birthday cake surprise, that kind of a thing. But I truly appreciate you, and I appreciate Eric, and I appreciate you giving a voice to the all the cops and the people in the NYPD, because it's an amazing organization in spite of all its faults and everything. And again, I'm always going to identify myself as an NYPD cop. I don't, even though I work now for a different in a different capacity. It's always going to be my sweet spot, my home, my real true love. So, thank you very much, John.
You really exemplified something I learned early on. I'll never forget. I was 23 years old. I was in Iraq, and I had this captain. We were sitting, we were talking, and he said, "You know what? Do everything you can while you're here. Don't hold back." He said, because in life, all you're going to have is stories. He said, when it's all said and done, no one's going to care how much money you have. He said, you're just going to have stories. So I took that with me, and I passed that on when I was working in the police department. I would tell my guys, go out there and do everything you can with this job. All the units you can, or get all the experiences, because when it's all said and done, all you're going to have is stories. And I tell you, you have so many stories that you live through that are so impressive. And I agree with Rob Lukash. And he's an outstanding man. For him to say that, he's a pure leader, to say you're a true American hero, he's absolutely right. So with that being said, I can't wait to read your book. I'm sorry I haven't read it yet. I will read it. Unfortunately, my son was battling cancer for about a year and a half. I definitely will read your book. I'm super excited about it. There's so many stories you have to tell. Are there any stories that you have that you did not fit in your book that you would like to tell?
Well, it's probably relatable to my my interactions with the JTTF. So I'll try and make it a brief story, but it's kind of anecdotal and it's funny at the same time. So in the intelligence division, they would farm out jobs and investigative leads and things. And one of the things that came across my desk was a computer that needed to be exploited. Well, obviously, that's a different area of expertise, and that's something that the JTTF has all the hardware and software to do the exploitation of this computer. So I called the counterpart down at the JTTF, and I just as a matter of fact, as I'm talking to you guys, and name ironically enough is John, and I said, "Hey, John, I got this computer here, but I go, it's really not something that we do." He cuts me off mid-sentence and says, look, we don't have to do this song and dance. Just bring me the computer. So and I don't know this guy. I've never met this guy, right? This is from the JTTF. Last week, he was in the locker room in some precinct. Now he's at the JTTF and he's got federal credentials, right? So I said, John, it sounds like you're having a bad day. He goes, yeah, why don't you come down here and make it better for me? I said, don't go anywhere. I'll be right there. So I grab my detective and we drive down there. And now it occurs to me, I don't know what this guy looks like. I've never met him, right? So I see two detectives walking across the street. Now I'm on the footsteps of 26 Federal Plaza, right? Cameras everywhere, federal police officers everywhere. And I said, hey, I'm looking for this guy named John, right? And he goes, oh, he's right there. So now we are chest bumping each other. I'm like, I don't want to say on your show because I don't want to get you in trouble. What I said to him, I said, you need to get in the car and meet me by the Brooklyn Bridge Park. I go, and bring a friend because you're going to the hospital. Like that, right? So
that is a good story.
My detective at the time is like physically separating us, like two cats in a bag. You know what I mean? So we get in the car, and his name is Jerry Ahern. He passed away from 9/11 cancer. And he says, Chris, he goes, so that was real smooth. That was real smooth. So I'm driving across the Manhattan Bridge, and I get a phone call from my friend Sean, who's running the ops desk, and on my job phone. And he goes, hey, what's going on, buddy? And I go, no, nothing much. What's going on? He goes, I just got a phone call. Were you by any chance in Manhattan just a couple minutes ago? I said, that would be me. He goes, and apparently this guy had a reputation. Again, I never met him. I never spoke to him before. He goes, that guy is the biggest loser in the world. Like that. He's only there because his dad was or is, or at the time was a chief, and he put him in there, but he was hated. That conversation, I thought I faded it. 6 months later, my inspector approaches me and says the same thing. I thought it was all done and over with. And he repeats the story. And he goes, that's the best story I ever heard. Because everybody knew him and everybody, but he had, as you know, he had people in high places. He had a lot of juice. So he could afford to talk down to people like that. I'm like, you're not talking to me like that. Yeah. I don't talk to anybody. I don't talk to a cop like that. Yeah. You're definitely another sergeant. You're not talking to me like that. So, but anyway, I just wanted to share that story about even amongst the vaunted JTTF, where everybody there is a superstar and super smart. Apparently, there's some small-minded people there as well.
Dude, but that's the one thing I think like no one will ever know if they didn't work in the police department. There's so many other units and things you need to like complete your mission, and almost every step of the way, you just encounter roadblocks like that. And you're like, I don't understand. Like, I got to notify you. Just put it down on paper and let's go. Like, you know what I mean? And like, that's the one thing that they never broke that, like, somebody could be a fully functioning unit, or like, you need to do this. You need to get this log number. You need to send it over here. And then every step of the way, you run into a schmo like that, you know? Like, I'm like, is this for real? Like, do I really have to do this? Do I have to do this? Like,
that's a great story. Because I remember one time I was working when I was actually a crime sergeant, and I was working. I never forget. I was covering patrol one day for a guy. He needed a day off. So I'll cover for you. And I was working. We had housing projects in the confines of the 10th precinct. It was I was working a Lower East Side of PSA force. It was on the other side of the command, the 10th precinct. And I ended up having like a sergeant was arguing with me on the radio back and forth about who should be responsible for a job. But it got kind of heated to the point where I said, that's it, we're going. I went to the 10th precinct. I'm looking at the sergeant. I called him out. I walked in. The CO was there, lieutenants, I didn't care. I said, where's Sergeant? I forgot his name. I said, where's Sergeant so-and-so? The guy's, oh, that's him right there. So he comes out. He said, oh, let me talk to you. So I said, come outside. We'll talk. And right away, he's like, oh, I got 26 years on the job, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I think I had like 8 years on the job. I said, well, then you got 6 years too much. And then I think we were going to go to blows, but we ended up laughing, and we ended up becoming friends. It was, but yeah, the job's full of egos, right? So you got to manage them. So again, Chris, you are super impressive. Thank you so much for being here. And not only that, you're welcome here anytime. Friday, we do roundtables where we have past guests. Usually you get part of the discussion. So you're welcome anytime. I hope you take an opportunity to come with us on a Friday at some point and give us your point of view, because you have so much experience. You are a true American hero. The comments here are awesome. People love you. I love you already. Thank you so much for everything you do. I can't wait to read your book, and God bless you and your family. And I know you have a son in law enforcement. I assume those 3-letter words might be something I think what it is. But yeah, outstanding. Chris, take it away. Give us your last words.
Just thanks a million. And I'll definitely take you up on the roundtable. I really enjoyed being here and talking to real cops and real men and people that, that truly care, that their heart is in the right place. And thank you both for the kind words. I truly appreciate that very much.
No, 100%, brother. Appreciate it. It was long overdue. Thank you for taking your time out of your day to spend with us. Really appreciate it, guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to the links, purchase Chris's book, read it. It's very eye-opening, and it shows like how we constantly talk about how politics is so intertwined with policing. You even see it with our military as well. So, and how frustrating it is to the boots on the ground, and you know, it portrays us all in a bad light, and people are really just trying to do God's work, you know, and they're being hindered by a political agenda or somebody looking to get promoted or whatever it is. So we appreciate everyone. We gave you a true American hero today, Christopher Strom. We appreciate you, brother. And ladies and gentlemen, 5:05 p.m. today. Check out the Executive Perspective. Appreciate it. Chris, thanks again, bro.
7-5.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?